Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're stripping away all the polish. We're stepping away from that curated, filtered, brand safe world we often live in, and we are looking at something and someone completely and totally raw.
Yeah, we're really looking at a collision.
A collision is the perfect word.
Mm.
It is a study in friction. Today we're unpacking the life of a figure who embodied, arguably the greatest, most violent contradictions in the history of hip hop.
It's true. A man who could absolutely terrify you in one verse, and then, in the very next track, bring you to tears with the most sincere prayer you've ever heard.
We are talking, of course, about Earl Simmons, but the world knows him, hears him, and frankly feels him as DMX.
Dark Man X. And, to really understand DMX, you have to understand the moment he arrived. You can't just look at his life in a vacuum.
Oh, no. Context is absolutely everything here.
Everything.
So let's set that scene. It's, say, 1997. If you were listening to the radio, if you were watching MTV, the vibe was very, very specific. The notorious B.I.G. has just passed away.
Tupac is gone.
Tupac is gone. The two absolute pillars of the genre are dead. And the rap game is in this very specific place.
It's the shiny suit era.
The shiny suit era, exactly.
Right. This is the total dominance of Bad Boy Records, Puff Daddy. It was a time of, celebration rap. The music videos were all shot with those fisheye lenses. Everyone's wearing these bright yellow or metallic silver suits.
Drinking champagne on yachts.
Drinking champagne on yachts and sampling these huge, glorious 80s pop hits like, David Bowie or The Police.
It was glossy. It was aspirational wealth. It was all about we made it.
Totally. We made it. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, or, more accurately, out of Yonkers, New York, comes this sound.
And it wasn't a melody?
No. It was a bark. It was growling. It was a guy in Timberlands and a bandana, sweating, shirtless, running with pit bulls. For a lot of people, it felt like a genuine shock to the system.
It wasn't just a new artist dropping a single. It felt like a market correction.
That is the perfect term for it. I was going to say the same thing. It was a disruption of the market in the truest sense. DMX didn't just join the industry. He corrected it. He brought what some people call horrorcore, which was usually this underground niche style.
Right.
And he dragged a gritty street-level perspective right back to the top of the charts. But, unlike Tupac, who was often very political or poetic, DMX was visceral.
Yeah.
He was purely instinctual.
So our mission today is to look behind that bark. We really want to understand the dichotomy. How does a man write these horrorcore anthems about violence, but then also include sincere, tear-jerking prayers on every single one of his albums?
And how does a man who claims to love dogs more than humans, who essentially identifies as a dog, how does he end up convicted of animal cruelty?
And maybe the biggest question of all, how does a man sell 75 million records, becoming this global superstar, while fighting a lifelong crippling addiction that started with a terrible betrayal in his childhood before he was even old enough to drive a car?
It's a huge story. And we've got a massive stack of sources today. Biographical records, legal dockets, discography data, and a ton of legacy tributes. We are going to unpack the life of Earl Simmons.
Let's start at the very beginning, because with DMX, the origin story isn't just, background info.
No, it's the key.
It is the blueprint for everything that came later. If you don't understand the years 1970 to 1985, you just cannot understand the music. So we're going back to Mount Vernon, New York, 1970.
So Earl Simmons was born to teen parents. His mother was 19, his father was 18. And right from the jump, the stability that every child needs was just. It was absent. His father was an artist. He actually painted watercolors, and he moved to Philadelphia, essentially leaving the family behind. So Earl was raised mostly in Yonkers in the School Street housing apartments.
And the sources we have, they paint a really, really harrowing picture of his childhood. This wasn't just tough love or some strict household. This was severe, documented abuse.
It was. It really was. He suffered incredible physical violence at the hands of his mother and her various boyfriends. We're talking about being beaten with broomsticks, with electrical cords.
God.
He actually lost teeth during these beatings. It was so traumatic that he was expelled from school by the time he was 10 and sent to group homes, like the Children's Village. But before that, there's this really crucial detail about how he coped with that environment at home.
The dogs.
The dogs. He started befriending stray dogs. And this is like the psychological bedrock for him. When the humans in his life, specifically his mother, the one person who was biologically wired to protect him, were the source of all his pain.
Right.
The stray dogs offered him unconditional love.
That makes the whole dog persona makes so much more sense. It wasn't just some gimmick he came up with in a marketing meeting.
No way.
It was his tribe.
It was his family. He looked at these animals, and often they were pit bulls, which were also feared and misunderstood by society, and he saw himself in them.
There's this one detail in the biography that is just, it's heartbreaking. It mentions that as a kid, he was living on the streets, he was starving, he was robbing people just to survive.
He was. By the time he was 15, he was sleeping in clothing donation bins and on rooftops.
But the note says he robbed someone not to buy food for himself, but to buy a leather collar and a harness for his dog.
And that one story just encapsulates Earl Simmons perfectly. He would starve himself to feed his dog because the dog didn't judge him. The dog didn't beat him. So when he later adopts the barking, the growling in his music, he's basically signaling to the world, I am part of this tribe, not yours.
But to survive, he had to become a predator in the streets. He turned to carjacking and robbery as well as a means of survival. It was grim.
It was purely survival. I mean, he was stealing clothes to wear. He was stealing food to eat.
But amidst all that chaos, there was the music. It started with beatboxing, right?
Correct. Around 1985, he started beatboxing for a local rapper named Reddy Ron. Now, we need to put a big pin in that name, Reddy Ron.
Oh.
He was the mentor figure. Earl was the percussion. Ron was the rapper. This relationship is, well, we'll get to it later, but it is the pivotal tragedy of his entire life. But musically, this is where it all starts.
And the name DMX, I always just assumed it stood for Darkman X right from the beginning.
You know, most people do, but actually, no. It originally came from the Oberheim DMX drum machine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was a classic piece of equipment in early hip-hop.
Yeah.
He used it, he liked the letters, and so he just took the name.
It fits, though. He named himself after a machine. Cold, hard, rhythmic.
Exactly. It wasn't until later, as he developed his persona and got into the 5% Nation ideology, that he reinterpreted it. First as Divine Master of the Unknown, and then eventually Darkman X.
Divine Master of the Unknown. That is a very heavy, almost mystical title for a kid from the streets of Yonkers.
Well, it speaks to that spiritual side he always had, even back then. He was an old soul, but his university wasn't some music conservatory.
Yeah.
It was the penal system. He served time for carjacking, and that's where he really honed his writing skills. He developed this style called spellbound.
Oh, I've heard of this. This is where he would literally spell out words in the rhymes, right?
Exactly. And it requires immense breath control and incredible rhythmic precision. He would weave the spelling of words right into the flow. I-M-A-N-R-A-P-P-E-R. I mean, if you miss a single beat, the whole structure just collapses.
And he was doing this in the prison yard.
In the prison yard, battling other inmates. He even battled K Solo, who was another big name at the time. He was building his reputation as a gladiator.
So he wasn't writing songs for the radio. He was writing rhymes to destroy the person standing right in front of him.
Precisely. It was combat, pure verbal combat.
But here's the thing that surprised me in the research. We all think of DMX as just exploding onto the scene in '98. He actually had a record deal way before that.
He did. This is kind of the lost era of DMX. He was signed to Columbia Rough House in the early 90s, and this was a legit label. They had the Fugees, they had Cypress Hill. He released a single called Born Loser, and it flopped. Total silence. The label, they didn't know what to do with him. They tried to make him sound a little more like the current trends. It wasn't authentic, so the label dropped him.
Imagine that. DMX, the guy who would go on to sell tens of millions of records, was technically a failed artist by the mid-90s.
And that failure is so important to his story. It hardened him. It meant that when he finally got his second shot, he wasn't just happy to be there, he was angry. He had something to prove. He had seen the industry chew him up and spit him out, so he decided, okay, this time I'm just going to kick the whole door down.
Which brings us to the turning point, the Rough Riders.
The Dean brothers, Wah and Dee Dean, and their sister, Siobhan. They were the management. And of course, the key connector, Irv Gotti.
Irv Gotti seems to be in the middle of every major hip-hop story from this era.
He really was. Irv Gotti was an A&R at Def Jam. And he believed in X when literally nobody else did. He famously dragged Lyra Cohen, who was the head of Def Jam, to go see DMX at a studio in Yonkers.
And the story of that meeting is legendary.
It is. The story goes that DMX performed for him with his jaw wired shut.
Wait, what? His jaw was wired shut?
Yeah, from a street fight he'd been in, he had wires in his mouth. But he didn't let that stop him. He rapped with such intensity, like spitting and sweating right in Lyer Cohen's face, that Lyer essentially had no choice but to sign him. He was apparently terrified and mesmerized at the same time.
I believe it. So he signs Def Jam. It's 1998. And this year, I don't think we can overstate what 1998 was for DMX and for hip-hop.
It is statistically one of the greatest years any artist has ever had in the history of recorded music, period. In May 1998, he releases his debut album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot.
Which, of course, includes Rough Riders Anthem. That song is still an absolute banger.
It is. Produced by Young Swizz Beatz. And what's interesting is that DMX hated that beat at first.
Right.
Yeah, he thought it was too simple. He said it sounded like a nursery rhyme. But that simplicity was exactly why it worked. It was an earworm. The album debuts at #1. It goes on to sell over 4 million copies. And that alone is a career-defining moment for anyone.
But he didn't stop there. Not even close.
No. Def Jam wanted more. DMX went right back into the studio. And in December of that same year, he releases his second album, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood.
2 albums, 1 year, and both went to #1.
Both debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. He became the first living artist to achieve that. Tupac had done it, but only posthumously. For a living artist to generate that much high-quality material and just dominate the charts twice in a single calendar year, it's absurd.
And the cover of Flesh of My Flesh is so intense, he's just covered in blood.
It was provocative. It was disturbing. And you know what? It was exactly what the kids in the suburbs wanted. They wanted that danger. He hadn't compromised his sound one bit to get to the top. He forced the mainstream to come to him.
And that just kicked off this historic run.
The winning streak, absolutely. His next album, And Then There Was X, in 1999, was his bestseller. That was the one with Party Up in Here.
I can hear the whistle in my head right now.
Of course. Then came the Great Depression, then Grand Champ, and with those, DMX became the only rapper in history to have his first 5 studio albums debut consecutively at #1 on the Billboard 200.
5 in a row, straight out of the gate. That's insane.
It's a record that speaks to a fanatic fan base. I mean, you don't get 5 #1 debuts by accident. You get that because people are buying the album the day it drops without even hearing the singles yet.
They just trusted the brand.
They trusted the brand. They knew DMX wasn't going to sell them some fake, polished version of himself.
And while he's crushing the music charts, he's also becoming a movie star, which, looking back on it, is kind of wild.
It makes sense, though, doesn't it? He just had this intense, magnetic charisma. He starred in Belly with Nas in 1998.
That movie is a cult classic. I mean, visually, it's absolutely stunning.
Hype Williams directed it. And DMX plays Buns, this ruthless, unforgettable character. And a lot of critics at the time said he wasn't really acting. He was just channeling a version of himself. But then he transitioned into mainstream action. He teamed up with Jet Li in Romeo Must Die and Cradle to the Grave.
And Steven Seagal in Exit Wounds. He was a legitimate box office draw.
He was. He was making like $5 million a picture. He had the look, the voice, the presence. He even had his own reality show, DMX, Soul of a Man, on BT. For a while there, he was just everywhere.
But with all that fame came friction. And we have to talk about the beefs. Because DMX was, well, he was not one to bite his tongue.
No, not at all. And the most famous one is probably the one with Ja Rule.
Which is interesting because they were in a group together for a minute, right? Murder Inc.
The group that never was. It's supposed to be this super group. Jay-Z, Ja Rule, and DMX. Can you even imagine that lineup today?
That would have been the dream team of that era, so why didn't it work?
Egos. Massive, massive egos. And a lot of internal tension. DMX specifically had a huge issue with Ja Rule. He accused Ja of stealing his signature style, that gruff, gravelly, barking voice.
I mean, if you listen to early Ja Rule, you can hear the similarity.
You can. And DMX took it very personally. He felt like his identity, his very soul, was being co-opted for pop hits. He released diss tracks like, "We Don't Give a Fuck." It was a deep, deep resentment.
Did they ever make peace?
They did, to their credit. They eventually squashed the beef years later at the VH1 Hip Hop Honors in 2009.
And then there was Jay-Z.
That was a different kind of tension. That went all the way back to a rap battle in the Bronx in the early 90s. They supposedly battled on top of a pool table for hours.
So who won?
Well, it depends on who you ask. Jay-Z had the flow and the wit. DMX had the raw aggression and the energy. They were like two kings of New York fighting for the same crown, but with totally different styles. Jay-Z was the cool, calculated hustler. DMX was the raw, emotional, loose cannon. They respected each other, but yeah, there was always that friction there.
You mentioned emotional, and that brings us to the other side of DMX. the side that I think made him truly unique, the faith.
This is the central paradox, isn't it? You have a guy known for horrorcore lyrics about grime and violence and death who read the Bible every single day.
And not just in private. Every album had a prayer. And these were not skits. They weren't jokes.
No, they were sincere, vulnerable moments of complete submission to God. The beat would drop out, and he would just speak from the heart. He was a transitional deacon. He openly aspired to become an ordained pastor.
Wow.
He viewed his life and his survival through everything as a divine mission. He famously said he was kept alive to give a message that Jesus loves them.
It's incredibly powerful. You'd be in the club listening to Party Up, and then on the drive home, you're listening to this man crying out to God for forgiveness. It made him human.
It grounded the entire persona. It showed that all the aggression was a response to pain, and the faith was the only thing holding that pain back.
But unfortunately, the pain often won, and we have to move into the shadows now. Because as successful as he was, his legal rap sheet is, well, it's extensive.
It's a pattern that spans decades. We're talking about over 30 jail stints. And the charges, they range from the mundane all the way to the completely bizarre.
Let's talk about the JFK incident, because when I read this in the notes, I had to double-check that it wasn't a movie script.
Right, so this was June 2004. DMX is at JFK Airport in New York. He crashes his SUV through a parking lot gate.
Okay, that's bad enough right there.
But then he gets out of the car and tries to carjack another vehicle. But here is the kicker. He claims to be a federal agent.
While trying to steal the car.
Yes. He told the driver, "I am an FBI agent." He was under the influence of drugs at the time, Valium and crack cocaine. It's a terrifying situation for the people involved, but it also just speaks to the level of dissociation and chaos that was entering his life because of the substance abuse. He had completely lost touch with reality in that moment.
And then there's the animal cruelty. This is the one that really hurts the fans the most, I think. Because he was the dog. He loved dogs.
It's a tragic, tragic irony. He faced multiple charges in 1999, 2002, 2007. Police would raid his homes and find pit bulls in just horrible conditions, neglected, without water.
How do you even reconcile that?
Well, DMX often blamed his caretakers. He was on tour for months at a time, leaving these, hangers-on and friends in charge of the dogs. But ultimately, as the owner, it was his responsibility. It just reflects the chaos of his personal life bleeding into every single aspect of his existence. He couldn't take care of himself, and consequently, the things he loved most suffered too.
And then there were the financial issues. 15 children.
15 children with 9 different women. The financial strain was just immense. The child support obligations were astronomical. He filed for bankruptcy 3 times, though the courts often dismissed the filings because he wasn't fully disclosing his income.
Yeah.
It was just this endless cycle of earning millions and losing millions.
And tax fraud.
Right. In 2017, she was convicted for failing to pay taxes on about $2.3 million in earnings. He served a year in prison for that.
But all of this, the arrests, the money problems, the bizarre behavior, it all seems to circle back to one thing.
Addiction.
Addiction. And the story of how his addiction started is one of the most heartbreaking things I have ever heard. It really changes how you see everything.
It's the rosebud of his life.
Mm-hmm.
It's the absolute root of the trauma. And for this, we have to go back to Ready Ron.
The mentor we mentioned earlier, the rapper that a young DMX beatboxed for.
Exactly. DMX was 14 years old. He looked up to this guy. It was his birthday, apparently, and they were celebrating.
And what did Ready Ron do?
According to DMX's own account, Ready Ron passed him a marijuana cigarette, a blunt. DMX had never smoked before, but he wanted to be like his mentor, so he smoked it, thinking it was just weed, but it wasn't.
What was it?
It was laced with crack cocaine.
Kenny didn't know.
He had no idea. He said he felt a rush he'd never felt before. His heart started racing. His head was spinning. And then he found out what it was. He was furious. He was hurt. He confronted him and said, "Why would you do that to me? I looked up to you."
That's not just an introduction to drugs. That's a violation.
It's assault. It's the poisoning of a child. It is a profound betrayal of trust by a father figure. And addiction experts will tell you, when your introduction to a substance is traumatic and non-consensual like that, especially at such a developmental age, it completely rewires the brain.
Right.
He wasn't partying, he was tricked. And he spent the next 36 years fighting that demon that was put inside him that day.
It reframes his entire struggle. He wasn't just wild or out of control. He was fighting a biological dependence that was forced on him when he was just a kid.
Exactly. And he really tried to stop. He went to rehab many times, 2002, 2017, 2019. He would cancel entire concert tours to put his health first. He wanted to get better. He publicly struggled with it. And that's the thing. He never hid it. He let the whole world see the struggle.
Which brings us, unfortunately, to the final chapter, the collapse.
There was a warning shot in February 2016. He was found unresponsive in a Ramada Inn parking lot in Yonkers. The police revived him with Narcan. At the time, his team claimed it was an asthma attack, but the use of Narcan strongly suggests opioids were involved.
And then April 2021.
April 2nd, 2021. He suffered a massive heart attack at his home. Reports indicate it was likely triggered by an overdose. The critical factor here was time.
What do you mean by that?
Paramedics worked on him for 30 minutes to get his pulse back. That is a very, very long time for the brain to be without oxygen. He suffered from what's called cerebral hypoxia. By the time he got to White Plains Hospital, the damage was catastrophic.
He was on life support for a full week.
Yes, in a vegetative state with multiple organ failure, the world held a vigil. It was this strange week of everyone just praying for a miracle. Fans gathered outside the hospital, blasting his music, holding candles. It was a really powerful scene.
But on April 9th, 2021, Earl Simmons passed away. He was only 50 years old.
50. It feels so young, and it is. But then you consider the life he lived, the abuse, the addiction, the stress. In a way, it's a miracle he survived as long as he did. The odds were against him from day one.
The send-off, though. The send-off was fit for a king. Or, maybe more accurately, a general.
It was incredible. The celebration of life at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. You had Kanye West's Sunday Service Choir performing. But the visual that I think will stick with everyone forever is the procession.
The monster truck.
A massive custom monster truck carrying his red casket with "Long Live DMX" painted on the side, driving through the streets of New York. And behind it, hundreds and hundreds of Rough Riders on motorcycles, popping wheelies, revving their engines. It was loud. It was aggressive. It was perfect.
He was exactly how he should have gone out.
Exactly. And the funeral service itself, the homegoing celebration, had that red casket, and it was labeled with one word: faith. But there was a moment during the tributes that caused a little bit of a stir. Liar Cohen again.
The Def Jam executive who signed him.
Yes. In his tribute, he called DMX a gremlin.
A gremlin? That sounds pretty insulting.
It sounded very odd to the public. But in context, he was trying to distinguish between Earl Simmons, who he described as a sweet, wonderful man, and DMX, the gremlin, or the artistic beast that took over when the microphone was on. It was an affectionate, if maybe clumsy, way of describing that duality we've been talking about, the man versus the beast.
So we look back now. What is the legacy? Where do we put him?
Oh, it's massive. First, he redefined the genre commercially. We talked about the shiny suit era. DMX ended that single-handedly. He made it okay to be gritty again. He proved you didn't need a polished, radio-friendly image to sell tens of millions of records.
She also changed the emotional landscape of hip-hop.
Correct. He made it okay to cry. He embodied emotional honesty. Before DMX, being hard meant being emotionless. DMX showed that being hard meant facing your pain, screaming about it, and praying about it. He gave men, specifically black men in America, permission to be vulnerable.
And statistically, he just stands alone.
75 million records sold. The only artist with those first 5 albums debuting at #1. I mean, that record might stand for a very, very long time.
And culturally, he's still here. You've got the movie Deadpool using X Gon Give It to Ya, which introduced him to a whole new generation of kids who weren't even born in 1998.
And the tributes after his death. Everyone from LeBron James to Viola Davis. The New York State Senate declared December 18th Earl DMX Simmons Day. He's enshrined in the culture.
There was a posthumous album too, right? Exodus.
Yeah, released in 2021. It featured Jay-Z, Nas, even Bono from U2. It felt like a final gathering of the greats to honor him.
You know, when we look at DMX, it's so easy to get caught up in the barking and the bikes and the arrests. But when you really unpack it, like we have today, you see a man of such incredible extremes.
Extreme talent, extreme pain, and extreme faith. He was the divine master of the unknown, who took the unknown struggles of the streets, the addiction, the abuse, the loneliness, and he made them known to the entire world.
He made us look at the darkness.
And he was always, always trying to bring some light into it.
So here's the question we want to leave you with. DMX changed hip-hop by stripping away all the glamour and showing the ugly, raw truth. In today's music landscape, which is so highly curated, so polished for social media, so incredibly brand safe, is there even room for another artist as raw and unfiltered as DMX? Or was he a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon that the industry would never allow to happen today?
That really is the question.
Think about it, and please check the show notes for the full list of sources we used for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.